Yeah, that's a useful feature. Thank you.
You're welcome. I didn't know we had it until I had to look for it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So next are corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar. And Bertrand, you have one, right?
Yes, I would like to make to discuss of the minute. Yes.
Okay, so we'll move the minutes out, discuss them separately. Are there any other corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? Okay, hearing none. Next item 5 is comments from the audience, an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on any non-agenda items that are within the subject matter of the district.
Not seeing any, not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, let me just ask whether Howard wants to comment on his submittal at this point. This would be the appropriate time. It's totally up to you.
I'll raise
Okay,
hand.
nothing? Okay, so item 6, written comments from the public. And we do have one that's submitted in the packet from Howard, which we'll actually talk about a little bit in item 13. Okay, moving on to item 7, adoption of the consent calendar. So this is request to approve the consent for claims, receivables, a shut-off report, reauthorization of teleconference meetings, and approval of the Bank of the West signature authorities. Is there a motion to approve those portions of the consent calendar?
Yeah, Dornbrook so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Peter, can you do a roll call, please?
Who said that? You have to.
John Schroeder,
Okay.
second.
Okay.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitch Aranda, absent. Perot,
I
Dornbrook, aye.
Okay, so it's, let's now move on to discussing the minutes separately. And Bertrand, floor is yours.
yes. So I wanted to discuss actually the attendees situation actually. So actually, yes, you are here. We can see here at the last meeting we had 1, 2, 3, and 4 person. No, 3 person only. And I'm confused on that. I thought there were more. I mean, typically we have more than that. And now we cannot see anymore the attendee. I think these people actually talk, but was there other people in attendance that did not talk? And I think we should make our best effort to list all the people that attend the meeting. That's basically my comment.
That's a good comment. And I think you're right. I think that's what just derived from the people that spoke probably.
Okay, did we record who else attended? We could, Eric?
I will have to, I think I'm gonna have to manually do it. I don't know how else I would do it.
Okay, well, so there's 2 solutions. One would be to just change this to say those speaking via Zoom. And the other would be to try to go back and figure out who was there. Bertrand, do you have a preference between those 2?
I would prefer that every people that attend the meeting are listed. Yes, actually. Yeah. And actually, when we were doing in person, we were having a sheet moving in the room so people can sign in, and they were part of the roll call or whatever you want to call that. Yeah. So I think we should do better in reflecting the attendance. Yes, that's basically my, yeah.
I think we all agree. The question is, for the purpose of this meeting notes, we can either change it to say those who spoke, or try to go back and.
So now I got your point. I think for this minute, so we can approve them, we could say spoke. Yes.
Okay, so with the suggestion that we'll change that to say people who spoke via Zoom.
Speakers, yes.
Speakers via Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, with that amendment, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and Peter, can you do the roll call? And then please note that Doug has joined the meeting.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Mitteranda,
I think I'm just having trouble hearing y'all, so but yes, aye.
okay, Perot,
Aye.
Nordberg, aye. Unanimous.
Okay, thanks. So we'll now move on to item 9, items for board consideration. We'll start with finances. And Kelly, you can assume that we've all studied them. So just highlight things that you want to draw our attention
Sure.
to or questions that people have.
Let me pull
And
up.
we're on page 37.
Correct. So I didn't really have any notes on the balance sheet, so unless there are any questions on that. Okay, we'll move on then to the combined income statement on page 40 of your packet. Just to note, for the month of November, revenues were down from plan by $51,000. Year-to-date total operating is up from plan by $7,200. And unless there are any specific questions on any of the funds, I've made my notes on those specific funds. Are there any other questions on income statements? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on then to December preliminary. You'll note, and this is on page 54 of your packet, operating revenues for the month of December were up from plan by $30,000. So obviously we know that when it snows, the revenues go up. And so those are the actual revenues for December. Are there any questions on December preliminaries?
I don't know if you have the answer at that stage because they are preliminaries, but I wonder what the situation for propane in December, knowing that we had so many people and we actually consume our full capacity. So I'm assuming it may be for the next board meeting.
Well, I know that we actually, even with the reaching our capacity for propane, we were still under budget by 49,000 cubic feet sold. Okay. So we're very close to what our budgeted was for propane for the month of December.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, we'll move on to cash flow on page 55. You can see total operating cash for the month of December ended at 1.65 million, almost 1.66, which was $217,000 better than planned. So that's good, even with some of our AR. We has not hit the bank yet as of December 30th for December.
Kelly, so I had one question about that. I mean, the AR was quite different than normal.
Mm-hmm.
And was that because we billed later or people took the holidays off?
It's because because our biggest customer has not paid their November statement yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You'll let us know if we need to worry.
Well, I've emailed them, so
Okay.
and I got a response that we will be getting payment as soon as possible, but they did not give me a date or anything of when the check would be mailed. But
Okay.
This is the third time this has happened, at least since I've been here. So it happens about once a year, Kel.
Yeah, depending on but you can see that from the receivables and shutoffs report that was much higher than what it normally was.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, moving on then to known budget variances. The only thing that was updated was obviously the cost of purchase power through November.
And one question on that, propane is certainly higher,
Mhm.
but that's not a budget variance because we just tack on the increase.
What do you
Is
mean?
that
I'm
right?
sorry, Bob, I'm not, what do you mean
Well,
propane is
the
higher?
cost of propane is higher
Oh,
than
right.
what it has been, but we just add that higher cost onto the revenue.
Exactly.
So it doesn't show up as a budget variance because we automatically
we-
adjust every month.
Exactly. That's exactly
Okay.
right, Bob.
Okay.
And so the cost is higher because of increase of the price, because
Right.
it was actually very much higher, something like 30% or something like that.
Yeah.
So is this a trend that do we have any hint on what's going to happen next?
It happens. It happens. This is very common,
Yeah.
Bertrand. It happens every year. In the wintertime, the price of propane goes up, and then in the summertime, it goes down.
Goes down.
Yeah. So this is very. It's not out of the ordinary by any means.
But that was the biggest increase I did sign for, 3 cents. Since
Just about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a big increase.
I don't remember, and I usually remember numbers. So I haven't seen such a high overcharge adjustment or whatever you call it
Sure.
in my
It was
crude
definitely
lifetime. Yeah.
more expensive, but that does happen through the winter time. But the actual amount, yes, the price of propane is higher than it's been than we can remember.
Yeah, that was the biggest one I've ever signed, Bertrand. So at least for 4+ years, I can tell you that is the biggest monthly increase.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else on on budget variances? Okay. And then we'll move on to item 9B, which is board meeting dates and time. And so, Eric, do you want me to kick this one off? Do you want to start?
I can run through it pretty quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
This was suggested at the last board meeting there that we bring it back. And so based on those discussions, moved it to Friday at 2. Everything else, all the other date moves just coincide with that. Everything slips back one day. So Wednesday becomes Tuesday, Thursday becomes Wednesday. And the only other change I made since I was in here, we're not allowed to charge for board packets anymore. There's a new law that just went into effect January 1st. So I eliminated that since we were updating the policy, I went ahead and eliminated it at the same time.
So one question on that line, we don't print them either, right? We just email them.
We just email, but
they're only electronic.
We're required to provide a print copy if someone requests it at no charge.
No kidding.
Yeah,
all right.
but no one requests them. Okay.
So this suggestion really came to my attention via Doug. Doug, do you want to comment on the change?
Well, the change for the $25 was not my intent.
No.
I'm glad to have that included.
I meant the big picture. Thank you for correcting.
No, but no, I think the change of the meeting date. I think Saturday mornings are just generally tough times for people to get out, and I think we have a staff that works during the week, and it would be better if we could, more align to staff business hours so that they don't have to work on Saturday mornings and take a weekend once a month to work with us on the board meetings. So that was really the intent, is just to align this better with business times, and I think that would be. I'd like to see this move forward. So appreciate the staff's time to recommend this change.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the board? And Eric, are there any? Oh, go ahead, Bertrand. Sorry.
Yeah, actually, I have comments. The problem I have is I'm fine changing to a different day, but I think using regular office hours, 9 to 5, whatever, is effectively good for the staff, but it's actually bad for the public. If you have a job, which is a 9 to 5 job, and you are not the boss, or you are not retired, then that creates a hurdle for you to be able to attend the meeting. And And I think we should encourage the public participation, not discourage it. So most of board meetings I'm aware of, if they do it during the week, they do it in the evening so people can attend. And so I'm very concerned that we are actually having an action here that's going to discourage people who don't have the same level of flexibility that most of us here have.
I could just respond to that. The Amador County, Amador Water Agency, City of Cedar Creek, City of Ione, ACT, ATCT, ACRT, and AFPD all meet during business hours. So it's incorrect to say that most boards meet after hours.
In Davis, where I also call for, all these meetings are in the evening so public can participate. So anyway, that's a moot point. I don't care if it's actually, I think we are discouraging public participation by doing that. And so I'm objecting to that.
Okay, thanks for that. Other comments from the board? And then Eric, are there any comments from the general public?
There is from the public, but I'm waiting on John or Doug to weigh in, or Peter.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to allow staff to reclaim their time. I think I agree that for people that are working, it'd be more difficult for them to take time out of their work schedule to attend. On the other hand, most corporate boards are held during business hours, so it's not unprecedented.
Yeah, corporate boards are not public entities, so it doesn't relate. I mean, there is no correlation.
Well, there is a correlation that they have shareholders that may have put millions and billions of dollars into the company and want to attend a board meeting. So there is a correlation there. It's true. Yeah. It's not public, it's shareholders, but it's a similar situation. So I don't feel that strongly about the off hours, but I do see that it might create more of a barrier. But I'd be fine with Friday during the day, because if we want to accomplish offloading staff time, well, if they have to work an evening, that might not be any better than working a Saturday. It's up to, depending on the staff opinion.
Yeah, this is Peter. I think we should give it a try and for at least 6 months, and I think see how it works out.
Breaking up, are you? Oh, okay.
Peter said give it a try for at least 6 months to see how it works out. And then Howard has his hand up unless there's any other board.
Okay, we'll return to the board. Howard, please unmute.
Okay. So having worked as a consultant with districts all around the state, and I'd say that as a consultant, I particularly liked having meetings during business hours. So in addition, I mean, the people that you have coming to your meetings besides the staff and the public and the board, business hours are going to be better. And so I like the proposal, and I think doing Friday at 2 o'clock is actually quite smart, because a lot of the people that are going to come up for the weekend are going to take a Friday off, especially if there's something on the agenda of the meeting that they really want to be involved in. So I'd just like to say that I think it's a great proposal, and I agree with Peter that it should be given a try.
Okay, Howard, thank you very much for your comment. Are there other comments from the general public?
Not seen any.
Okay, then back to the board. Are there any final comments, or is there a, does someone wish to
Well,
move
I would
this?
just also add, Bob, that we will. The plan, as I currently understand it, is that we will continue to have Zoom meetings in this format, even when we're all in person and whatnot. So people will be able to attend, and I understand Bertrand's point that taking off time might be difficult in some ways, but if people want to attend via Zoom and not have to be at the meeting all in person, that will still be an option even at this different time. So even if they don't come up Friday morning or take off, or if they come up Friday night and they still want to attend, they would be able to attend via Zoom and have their considerations heard.
Right. Thanks. Okay. Is there a motion to
I will
approve?
motion to approve this.
Doug moves. Is there a second?
Okay, hold on.
Peter,
Yeah.
second.
Okay, Bertrand, additional comments? Go ahead.
Yes, so if there is a motion for trial for 6 months, it's a different proposition than the way it's formulated in the proposal here. So I'd like to know what it is.
Policies can be changed at any time. So in 6 months,
I understand,
to
but
change it
it's
back,
not
they
the
could.
same message. If we are trying for if it's a tryout for 6 months, I might be voting for it. If it's the way it's formulated now, because it shut down public participation, I would not support it. So I just want to know.
Peter, since you suggested that, do you want to suggest a change?
I would say I'm prepared to adopt policy statement number 130 as written.
Okay, and maybe what we'd really like to do is agendize in 4 months to review how this is working. Bertrand, so I would plan on putting it on the agenda in 4 months, and then we could decide whether we want to keep it going or modify it. Would that meet your?
That would, yes.
Okay, great. Then I will make sure that happens. Okay, given that, Peter, can we do a roll call? Epstein, aye.
Schroeder?
Aye.
You got to yell to this one, Peter.
Oh, yeah.
Just yell. They can hear you.
Okay,
You can stay seated. You're fine.
sorry. We've got Epstein, Schroeder, Perot,
Aye.
Mittich, Rhonda,
Aye.
Dornberg, aye. Unanimous. I'll just move over here.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We'll move on to item 9D now. Performance reporting and aquifer levels.
9C.
And this ninth, I'm sorry. Yes.
Just
You got to watch me every moment. Yes, 9C, policy 130C, agendizing board meetings.
So this is the current policy
Page
as
57.
written. Yeah, this is the current policy as written. It's provided to every board member in their board packet when they are onboarded by Jess. So everybody's had the ability to read and review this. This is how it's written in the policy 130.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay. Since that was the discussion topic only, we're ready to move on then to 9D. Okay, so now performance reporting aquifer levels, and we'll turn it over to Brandy.
All right, good morning. So taking a look at performance reporting for December, you can see for electric that we had an actual metered of 850,000 kilowatt hours, which was less than budget, but also our unidentified system losses were down for the month. We were able to get people over to the backside to do backside reads, and there was some backside lift activity, which helped with that. Year to date, we're at 16% for the month, or excuse me, for the year. Propane, we had a lot of activity in propane for December. We ended up with a positive, an actual loss in propane of 7%, 261,000 cubic feet. Our year-to-date total for losses in propane is running at 2%. And we do continue to see our normal positive negative swing in propane.
No wonder my bill was so high last month.
It was cold.
It was quite cold and quite busy.
You were not in the top 50 users though, Bertrand.
I'm trying hard.
You have to leave more windows open.
Okay, so if we take a look back at the next page, water. For water, we had 1.4 million gallons metered, and that is slightly higher than our budget. We had a 15% unidentified loss for the month and 13% year to date. And then lastly, wastewater, we still had a fairly high unidentified unmetered usage at 32%. This is not uncommon this time of year. We did have some precipitation, but we also are keeping a close eye on this particular line item because of potential damages that we might have suffered in the collection system due to the dozer activity that happened during the Caldor fire. So we're trying to keep an eye to see if this goes down and follow seasonal norms, or if it's something that we're going to have to do additional work on next year. Are there any questions on the departmental totals before I go to the next couple of pages?
Can I make one little request? No, actually, you didn't mention it. You are showing that next thing. I thought you were, is the day occupant, I mean, not occupancy, the day of water use part of your report or something else?
It is part of the report.
Yeah.
I was going to.
So let me have a simple request on that report. You know, when you do your, is that a screenshot that you are showing us?
It's in the board packet that you received, yes.
Yeah. So my suggestion is, why don't you put the arrow on the current month so we have the actual number, and that would be actually posted for the record actually. So, you know, when you move your arrow and you have it on a specific dot, it shows a value and the date. So it would highlight the current months, and I think that would make another little feedback that would be useful.
So on the current month, you want the number showing?
Yeah, if you
Is
put,
that it? Okay.
if you just put your arrow,
yeah,
when you do the screenshot, that's all you need to do.
Sure. Okay, I would be happy to do that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very useful. I think it's very interesting also to see how COVID, and we can see with this curve what COVID has done to occupation and the magnitude of changes that enter. So I find it very interesting. Yeah.
I agree. It is interesting to look at, and on that slide, I mean, we can basically see we're over here in the orange on December. So we've come off of our COVID high occupancy levels back to tied for the lowest December that we have since 19. So we had a lot of impact that seems to be at this point tapering off, at least in the high season.
Yeah, and that's very interesting when you correlate that with what's happening on the operation income. So I think, yeah, I'm very happy you have that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the only other thing that we have in the packet for performance reporting is a different way to look at aquifer levels. There's a chart that is included here that's the average aquifer level for well 4 and 5. And that's included here just as a different way of looking at our aquifer levels in a chart format. And that is all I have for performance reporting.
Yeah, it's also useful. Thank you.
Brandy, there's one more, which looks at it as min and max.
There is, and I debated on including that one or not. It might be useful, but it also, something I'd like to get with you offline on, Bob, is just making sure that I'm clear on how it's presented.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Brandy on performance reporting? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 9E, a proposed resolution 22-01, adopting limitation on providing propane service to new development and construction. So this was a request from the last board meeting to look at sort of notice in terms of future propane connections.
Actually, that was 2 board meetings away.
It was a two-way?
Yeah.
How time? Okay. Sorry. All right. So Eric, why don't you lead us through the discussion?
Yeah, so this came out of both planning for quite some discussion, and then eventually to the board in November, then went to district council. And for those of you who have read the comments on there, a moratorium is not the correct, based on the board feedback, is not the correct term of what the board, or what the intent of the board was communicated as. And so Dick Shanahan has provided this, which is a cessation of service with the timelines that the board wanted, but not a moratorium. So it's yeah, so that's basically what it is. So it's not a moratorium, because moratorium basically, well, everyone read this, of course, but moratorium means that there's some condition under which propane would be provided again, and versus cessation of service to encourage electrification and to avoid building new tankage.
Okay,
and potential shortage.
Yes, and potential shortage. So to summarize the actual resolution, it defines new. That's not residences, but
it defines, yes. So
why don't you walk us through the definition? Just
sure.
Summarize it for.
This is what we talked. Can you still hear me? Because I have the microphone turned to Peter.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Bertrand, can you hear me okay?
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome. So as we talked about, so there's two categories, well, there's 3 categories ostensibly, but the 2 categories for propane service deadlines. Districts shall cease providing propane service to new development and construction in accordance with these deadlines. So this first one, 3A, is for existing lots and approved subdivisions, the 2-year threshold that the board requested. So, an empty lot next to Bertrand and KMA would have 2 years from the date of adoption to connect to propane, should they so desire. However, and then there's Class B, which is tentative maps, not final subdivisions. There are no lots. So for those of you who don't know how land use works, there are no lots created until a final map is issued by a respective county. At that time, those lots are created legally. So this would be for lots that don't exist ostensibly, for subdivisions that don't have a final map, and that would be an immediate cessation to service. And then continued service to existing customers is the 3rd category. So there would be no change to that. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yeah, that's good. Can we open up for board comments?
Yeah,
I 100% agree that we want to curtail propane service. I think there's one area that we should address, and it's that we really need to facilitate finding an alternative to propane for heat for new development. I think for a really large development, like if someone was going to develop a large complex north of 88, they may have their own resources to apply to figure out what's the right way to provide heat. But if you look at individual residents, I think that's a tough burden to put on them. So if you look at like an existing lot in KMA or East Meadows or what have you, I think it's pretty difficult. And if you look at a 2-year time frame, it'd be very difficult. It's actually not difficult. It'd be impossible to build a house in 2 years if you started right now. So basically you're saying don't purchase any lots and plan to build on in an existing subdivision until someone figures that out. So I know when I looked at the planning packet, there was some discussion about a reference implementation, and I heard some discussion about a utility district building that might be a candidate for a heat pump installation. And I'd feel much better about turning off new service to existing lots if we had a project underway that we could say, and here's how you do it. If we put a a bid out to put in heat pumps into one of our buildings. We'd see what vendors and what service providers respond with, what they recommend with regards to equipment, what they'll warranty. We'd get a better idea of how well the heat pump would work. And then I feel like we'd be guiding people in the right direction, that we could say, yeah, we're not going to provide you propane service, but here's a reference implementation that works in Kirkwood that you can use as an alternative. And so without that, I feel like we're basically devaluing the existing empty lots in our subdivisions.
I'd like to respond to a number of things here. First,
John, Bertrand first. John, is that finish your comment? I want to make sure you're not cut off.
No, what I prefer is,
why don't you finish what you want to say, and then Bertrand will make sure.
Yeah, so what I prefer is not to have that time limit on 3A. And what I would prefer is to put a project into place to create a reference implementation. So when we do introduce 3A, we can say here is a more proven alternative. That's my comment.
Okay.
Okay,
great.
so I'd like to respond.
Peter wants to talk too, by the way, Bob.
With regards to what your last statement, John, currently a heat pump has been installed in KMA in a remodel done by Brett Watford. So there is an example for you to use. See how it works in this year.
Well, that's good that we've got a little more progress on it than I knew about. But I think considering we're the utility provider, we should provide more visibility into what a reference implementation would be.
Peter, can we get some more information on that? Because it'd be interesting to know how it's working and just some general knowledge of how it was done.
I'll give you the lot number.
Okay, yeah. If we could follow up after that, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, that'd be a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to know how much propane it used and how much electricity it uses now, because there's a lot of data there, and the fact that there's somebody who did it is good news.
Actually, that example is going to be interesting because we are going to see the data for how the heat pump work. And it's been installed, it's running now. The problem is they were actually shut off before, so we won't be able to compare with their propane usage because their propane service was cut off. Anyway, so I'd like to come back to a number of things that John said. The first one is, yes, the PUD provides service, but we are in no obligation to do that. And there are alternatives. In KMA, actually, people can have their own underground tank. So it's not like we are preventing people to use propane. They can, if they want, it's just that the PUD would not provide it to them. They can have their own tank if they want. And I think in KMA, there is about 5 underground tanks. So people can have their own choice. So number one. Number two, 2 years is 2 years to the connection, not 2 years to build the house. So usually the connection is actually done in the first year when you do a construction project. If you read in the way the ordinance is written, it actually, the time lapse is to connect, not to finish the construction. So that gives more time for people to actually do the things. I don't know how other HOA work, if they do allow underground tank or not. That's something, for example, East Meadow, I don't know that. Do you know that, John?
I don't believe they're allowed, but I'm not certain. I don't think.
Do you allow it? That's the question.
I don't think individual propane tanks is a great thing for us to be.
I'm not either.
Hold it. You know, it just, not only then you're having an extra truck run of propane to fill these things up. If they're underground, then the homeowner has to keep snow off the access so it can be filled. I mean, it's a horrible solution. So I don't like that as a solution. As far as the 2 years, I can tell you I'm doing an addition to my house in the Bay Area. And I've been at it for 15 months and I just got approval from planning. So sorry, I stated it as be hard to build a house in 2 years, it'd be hard to architect a house in a short period of time. So I don't think, if I came into Kirkwood and was thinking about buying a lot to build a house and I heard that I might not be able to have propane service and I was uncertain about an alternative to propane for heating, I wouldn't buy the lot.
Okay, so then the next thing is there is a heat pump and that is actually working now, and we'll have more data during the year. I think, again, so initially, I mean, we have to put things in perspective. Is if we don't want to be put in the same bind that we went a week ago, with having to request people to curtail their use. I remember it was only a 4-day closure, and it was not the biggest storm we had at all. And we almost went out. So if we don't do curtail soon, then we should start working on increasing capacity or other solutions, because we are not on a sustainable path now.
Yeah, well, we just don't have that much new development that is going to create that much more propane demand in the short term. And I think if we got our act together, we could get a reference implementation done in time to better service our customers with an alternative than the concern about, how many homes are going to be built in the next year that are going to increase the capacity to a more critical level. I don't think there's going to be that much new development.
So John, let me ask you one question on your cautionary point here. So I mean, we are going to discuss in item 13, trying to get some reference implementations. Do you think instead of 2 years for existing lots, it should be 3 years or something? Or is there a modification that you would suggest? Or are you just identifying that we're risking devaluating some property that hasn't sold yet?
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely, I think, would be devaluing property if there's not an alternative. I guess ideally, I'd like us to approach these things from a productive standpoint rather than a punitive. Meaning, if we want to discontinue offering a service that's been a core service and will continue for existing customers, we should develop a reference implementation and an alternative and foster that, rather than thinking we're teaching the community a lesson by turning off propane. It's kind of a thought process that I think is a person building a house up there. I'm not like an evil person that wants to pollute using propane or overuse the capacity of the district. I just want to build a house, right? And so I'd rather guide them in the right direction of here's how you can do it in an efficient way that's going to work successfully for you, rather than just saying, hey, you're not going to have the service, go figure it out. So I'd like that flipped around. So certainly taking out 3A and deferring it until we have a alternative would be my preference. If that's too unacceptable, certainly if you put a long time frame on there, like 5 years or something like that, and we can show visible progress toward providing an alternative suggestion, that could be acceptable as well.
Okay, good. So Doug or Pete, do you want to offer your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is Pete. I concur with John that we should be a little bit more lenient with existing lots. I guess my other concern is I know we want to reduce propane use, but one of our tanks is pretty old, and I think it goes to 1959, and I'm a little concerned that we might have to replace that tank just to keep up with the current demand, not increase it, but just replace it. And so I think we need to have some flexibility, because we'll have to raise money to do that.
Okay. Good. Doug, your thoughts?
I mean, I think I generally agree with John's points. I think I would probably generally prefer to not strike 3A entirely and put a longer time frame in if that's the route that we would go, just because I think that that gives a more complete picture and puts the policy out in place. I think we also can revisit this as I think it says in the number 5, maybe it says that reconsideration, right? So I think we can also revisit this under changing circumstances. So I don't think we're locked into anything forever, but I do think we want to send a message that's as clear as possible with our intent. So that's why I think I would lean more towards extending a time frame in 3A as opposed to striking it.
Okay, and what do you have a time frame you would suggest?
I don't know that I have enough expertise on building and construction to have a reasonable understanding as to what 3 versus 5 versus 4 versus 2 would mean, to be honest, but I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, and there aren't a large number of residential lots that compared to the total propane service. Does anyone happen to know offhand how many
I would
buildable
say
lots
about
are there?
80.
Yeah,
80? So there's quite a few.
was that just KMA, Bertram?
No, KMA is about 30.
30.
So it's a significant number.
It is, and
Yeah, yeah.
don't forget, Bob and board as well, there is the Timber Creek townhomes that are scheduled to be built, and they're waiting with bated breath to know which way they're going to jump. And that's 8 units, I believe, Brandy or Rick, that they're scheduling for next year. So obviously we got pinched here this last time, and adding 8 more is definitely going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I want to revise my number because there was a bunch of construction in KMA, so it's probably close to 25 now.
Okay. Yeah, because there's like,
Okay.
yeah, it's about 4 going in KMA. He's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask for staff feedback on this discussion. If you want to offer any.
Brandy, I don't know if you want to say, I mean, none of this, this last outage, which Brandy will give all the details on a little bit later, should come as no surprise to the board. Staff's been warning about this since before I came to the board, that this was the situation. This was the doomsday scenario. And the fact that we got down to 7% and 4% in our tanks respectively is exactly what has been told by staff. So I think this cessation of service is important to do. Either that, or the board needs to put money in on this next capital go around to do a propane study, which would include increased tankage.
And I'd also just want to comment that we expected that we could survive a 5-day closure, and this actually was 5 days because the 5th day the roads were not in any condition for the tank to get here. So it actually did what we said. And Brandy, do you want to add anything on that?
I agree. This was the worst case scenario that we've been anticipating, a multi-day road closure in the busiest time of year when it's cold. And I'm happy to know that the community did reduce usage when we asked them to. If we're not going to stop adding additional if we're not going to add capacity and we're not going to cut off service for new development, then we certainly need to get some communication out to the public that this is going to be a somewhat regular occurrence during these types of situations. If it's cold over Christmas and you're snowed in for 4 days, you're going to need to reduce your consumption. So I do think we're in a spot where we need to make some movement.
Okay, good. Eric, are there any hands up or comments from the general public?
Yes, there is. Howard?
Okay, why don't we go to that now. Howard, please unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of comments. I mean, having developed a lot at Kirkwood, I think changing it from 2 years to 3 years would certainly make things a little bit easier for anybody with an existing lot. And even pushing out to 4 would really give people a lot of time. And but I think that in terms of the emergency situation, I think there are two things that can be done differently going forward. And the first thing would be to start getting some deliveries from the Carson Valley. That route is much more reliable than going over the Carson Spur. And secondly, in a case like this, where the weather was predicting that we were going to have the road closure, basically, I think the letter that was sent out was excellent, but maybe it could have been sent a day sooner.
Okay, thank you. Are there other hands up? Eric?
There are none. And just to follow up on that one point, we do have the ability to receive service from Reno or Sparks technically. So we already have that ability, and that was implemented as well. So we already do that.
So the question I would have is, and I know there may be some cost involved, impact on that, but should we have regular delivery from the east side, Reno, Minden, whatever, Spark? So we are a pretty big customer actually, and we could be a big customer for two different providers. The scenario of spur close, having to go through 50 that close very often, and is a very difficult road actually. It seems to be not an ideal scenario. So by having another regular customer on the east side, and would actually make sure that when we are in a pinch, we get service.
Our current provider has facilities in Sparks and on the west side.
Okay.
So we have that ability. It was just, it just didn't help in this particular situation.
So I think I'd like to follow on Peter's comment too, though. If there's a concern over the existing infrastructure, just from a maintenance standpoint, it seems like we need to do some study there anyway. I mean, what kind of bites you as a board member is what you don't know. And so until I heard that, I didn't really understand that there might be an exposure to the existing propane infrastructure. So certainly I don't know if we need to fund a study on that or what we need to do, but it seems like that has to become an action item to make sure we don't have an outage.
I mean, I guess just so I can understand this though, anything with the current infrastructure is going to be budgeted and planned for anyway, because none of this is changing current service for current customers. So if there's a tank that's currently in use, we would be doing this. If it had to be replaced, we would have to do that regardless of what this moratorium, or sorry, not the moratorium, that's the wrong word now, but whether what the statement would say, because we're going to continue to do that. So I mean, to the extent that we can marginally increase a 4% or 5% larger tank when we replace it, I mean, are those options to give us a little bit more breathing room? Is one question I have. But I do think that there's another just larger question. I think Brandy and Howard pointed on this in different ways, which is, how would we rethink this world, even if we add 8 more units or in some more lots? Like we are going to be living on in a case where this could have happened, and one could argue that we should have sent that letter 3 days before the storm and said, this is going to be happening. We're anticipating this, and we're going to have more communications on a daily basis about our status, and getting ahead of it even further than we did during the storm. And even just saying, to Brandy's point, like the communications of the community, that this could happen and this is what we're going to do and this is why. And the reason why is because we're trying to move ourselves away from propane, and it would be a massive cost and environmental issues to build another, add another tank to add more capacity. Like those are all things that I think we can justify. But I think there are kind of 2 approaches to this, which is, one, how do we put together a better plan for these very hopefully rare, but very possible, as we've seen, worst case scenarios? And then how do we service current demand, as will continue to do, and then restrict what we think is going to happen through this policy statement?
Thanks, Doug. Let me offer a couple of comments of my own. First of all, I want to commend Brandy. It was her suggestion that we ask people to cut back. And it was a great one, and and that was pulled together by staff and transmitted out, and the response was quite effective. But in order to know whether it was working or not, Brandy requested that we generate a list of the top 25 customer consumption by meter by day. And there's a huge variation in the same size houses and the amount of propane. So it makes me think the way you solve this problem in general is first say, are the customers as efficient as possible? So I think one opportunity, I see Bertrand shaking his head in agreement, would be to analyze some of this data, ask staff to analyze it, and potentially help some of these customers be more efficient. The other thing is our single largest customer historically is snowmelt. And that's an easy thing to request that they not do snowmelt in a period like this. So I think there are ways to give us more margin through efficiency and through studying what happened. I agree that the tank replacement is pretty likely in the time frame, no matter what. And so I think it really comes down to we really want to get a reference implementation and be able to move on that quickly, which is one of the topics we'll discuss later. And in that time frame, do we want to consider changing the number of years in item, I think it was 3A, I don't remember the number now, from 2 to something else, or do we want to leave this the way it is? And so maybe I'd like to ask whether someone wants to, whether we're ready to move to a vote or someone wants to suggest amending the time frame. Maybe let's try to move to a conclusion here.
I'd be fine moving it to 3 years to give more, soothe some concern here. And like you said, we have this resolution 5 that allow, which we can anyway always do, revisit that before it actually comes to implementation. If we find out within that time frame, for example, that heat pumps are not working, which I'm not going there, but
yeah,
if anything happens, we have the opportunity to adjust it in the future. So giving the right signal to the valley that people should conserve, and actually that the PBC may come to play here, actually incentive for conservation and being more efficient. And I really think we having, if you put it to 5 years, for example, it's just remove the incentive for people to try to get their act together. And we've been quite forceful actually to improve the safety of the meter. And that was actually, I would say, somewhat punitive to by actually threatening to shut off some people if they were not actually going to do the right thing. I think this is much less punitive, and we give time for people to adjust. There are solutions. We can definitively should keep working on communicating and providing help and understanding on how things can be done. And that actually, all those things need to be done. But in the meantime, giving a clear signal that it's time to improve and reduce potentially propane. If we are successful, actually, we are going to lose a few customers, and that will give freedom, a little more room for the others that remain on the system. So
okay,
that would be my proposal. Move it to 3 years, and but keep it so people understand this is a serious concern and things need to change in this area.
Okay, thanks. Other board comments? John, I see your hand up.
Yeah, see that, it's funny. I fundamentally agree with turning out, not continuing propane, but the statement saying we want to send a strong message to make sure people do the right thing. Someone buying a lot in Kirkwood to build a second home, they don't want to do the wrong thing. We have to show them what the right thing is.
Yeah.
And so, to leave it up to an individual homeowner, I think about when I bought my house there, I didn't have any time to go and research alternatives to propane heat. I just needed a contractor to build the house so I could move in and enjoy it with my family. So I don't think there's a message to be sent about doing the right or the wrong thing. I think we need to lead people in the right direction with the right alternative. And so having this provision in there at all creates doubt for anyone thinking about buying a lot or developing a lot in the existing subdivisions. Certainly, if you lengthened it to 5 years, it's better, although they still would have the same uncertainty. They'd say, well, I still don't know what the alternative is, so maybe I won't buy the lot or develop the lot anyway. So I'd like to shift the emphasis quite a bit on leading our potential new customers to an alternative solution and not approach the problem as sending a message about, some punitive message about doing the right thing, because these prospective home builders and lot buyers, I don't think they're evil trying to do anything that's wrong. They just want to build a house, and we need to help them say, hey, how do you put utilities in your house?
Yes, but we live in a community.
Okay, are there other board comments?
I mean, I would just say that I think that what I would like to see happen is have this move forward with an addendum to the time frame on 3A, like 3 or 4 years maybe. But I also think that I'd like to see, I think, Bob, the point on efficiency is very good using the data. I think that that's an excellent point to move forward. So I don't want to lose that one in terms of an agenda topic / staff effort / communications of things that we're doing. But I do think the other part that I don't want to lose is I do think that what we just went through will not go away because of this. And so we need to be prepared for that going forward, because we will continue to service the same demand that we have right now with presumably most of the same capacity that we have right now. And so I do think that we should be thinking about other alternatives. Like are there ways to get, I don't know, can we rent a propane truck to just sit outside for and get it delivered before the storm so that we have an extra quote unquote tank? Or can we do better communications? Like in maybe every November, we need to send in our newsletter. Remember, this is what happens, and this is a potential that could happen this winter. And here's what we're going to ask of you. We're going to ask you to reduce if we see this happen at a forecast come through enclosures. And we do have access from both sides, and just being more communicative. So I do think that there are a lot of things that have nothing to do specifically with this, but that I think are outcomes that we need to work on, with staff and our communications committee and things like that to, I think, do a better job mitigating the challenges that we're going to face regardless of this effort going forward.
Okay, thanks. Does someone want to make a motion?
We do have comments from the public, Bob, as well.
Oh, okay.
You want to take
great.
that?
Yes, please. Let's do that, and then let's call for a motion, or not. Who wants to speak?
And Fleur.
Oh, great. Okay, Ann Fleur, please unmute.
She's on. Nope, she remuted herself. Now she's unmuted again.
Okay, great.
Sounds like you're unmuted on Zoom, but you must be doing something on your computer. We can't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. I just wanted to comment in support of.
We lost you.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? My headset is malfunctioning.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
I wanted to comment in support of putting some term or end to new propane connections for multiple reasons. And I think in conjunction with that, definitely providing support and promoting energy efficiency and alternate heating options is critical. I think it's a two-pronged approach that is really important to, one, let people know that this really isn't a feasible way to continue heating our homes moving forward, and here are some other options that we're providing rebates for, or data on, and or both of those things. The building codes, California building codes are changing in that direction, and that change is going to be happening within the next 5 years, like most likely. They've already set up the building codes so that new homes are required to be built to provide, to be able to switch to electric heating in the future. You can no longer just provide propane or gas heating. You have to provide a power source at your heating location to be able to switch it out to an electrical heating source. That is in the current building codes. So I think that doing this would be in line with the direction the California building codes are moving anyways. And I think that building professionals are aware of these changes and know that they're coming. And so I think that they're already looking to move clients to electric. And I don't think that making it so they can't use propane is really going to be a very punitive action for very long, because that's the direction our entire state is moving in. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there other hands raised?
No.
Okay. Is there a, does someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, so I'd like to change from 2 years to 3 years. But otherwise, I would move to adopt the cessation of service. Is that an ordinance? I don't see the top. Is it a resolution? Sorry, I see that resolution as formulated by our legal counsel. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion to adopt resolution 22-01 modified with a 3-year time frame for existing subdivisions. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second that.
Doug seconds, and the runner-up to second place was that Pete?
That was Peter, yes.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, can we do a roll call, please?
Certainly. Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
You know, I'll reiterate, I absolutely agree that we should not further propane service. I don't like that we're approaching it from the standpoint of turning off service, and we put very little effort into creating alternatives. And then there's a number of other related topics that came up with regards to the state of the condition of the existing propane infrastructure, and that there's perhaps low-hanging fruit on efficiency that could relieve some of the capacity issues. So it's very hard to vote yes on this when I'm not seeing enough motion to approach this problem from what I think is a more productive direction. I guess I will vote yes on it with that long dialogue. Sorry about that. But I prefer the carrot over the stick, you know.
I hear a yes. Let's keep on with the, okay, Pete, please continue.
Yeah, I just prefer the carrot over the stick. You know, I don't understand it, but
got it.
I'll vote yes or aye.
Right. We're doing a roll call. Thank you very much. Okay.
that's an aye.
That's an aye.
Okay.
It's an aye and an asterisk.
All right.
Yeah.
Mina Durando,
Aye.
So I see that.
Let's finish the roll call, please.
I see that John was channeling his Bertrand.
I'm usually quiet in these meetings, but
I think
It's a great discussion.
the thing about this one is it's solvable. You know what I mean?
Let's finish the roll call, please.
it's done. I
it was
think.
unanimous.
Pete, did I hear your vote?
Yes, I voted aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously with at least 1 star. And I thank everybody. It was a terrific discussion, and we have 2 follow-up items which we'll do related to that in the future. I will make sure that we do both.
And I want to make sure that we address the concern that John has raised. We want to have a proactive action to educate, to show how it can be done, to demonstrate. And we have the PBC. PBC stands for Public Good Charge. Don't ask me why. but that's what it is. And so this is exactly in line of that. And I think we need to follow up and address John's concern.
Okay, I will.
Bertrand, the reason it's called PBC, it's public benefit charge. It's not called.
Yes, I know, but in the legal memo, it's a public good charge, and then between parentheses, PBC.
Okay, we are going to move on to the next item, which is F, wastewater treatment plant funding update from Eric.
I've been in contact with USDA. They've resubmitted and expanded. They wanted a 10-year capital plan, so I prepared that for them. I incorporated some Caldor fire potential repairs into that as well. So I've submitted that. They submitted to the federal level. She was hoping to have an update for me by yesterday. She did not get back to me. So hopefully we'll hear something from them next week.
Okay.
And I did talk to Eric McKean with Stiefel Nicholas, and he's aware of that as well. And he doesn't, you know, he thinks that timing would be acceptable to CoBank as well.
Okay, any questions? All right, hearing none, let's move on to item 10, the general manager's report.
I really don't have much. I did meet with Senator Dahl's staff, state senator, just briefly, just to touch base with them, try and do that quarterly. And that was a good meeting. And then the only other thing I have is if Peter's the only one who's going to show up here, it's a real pain to set this up and run it by myself because I'm not technically astute like our staff is. So if people could just let us know if they're not coming, because I can run this much easier from my office where I have 2 monitors. So I would appreciate if the board could reply in a timely fashion if they are or are not coming for future meetings.
Okay.
Will that be easier to resolve on Fridays at 2?
Yes, I'll have staff here, but we also need to know if we need to have someone monitoring the door to let, you know, board members in, et cetera. So just to be nice to know, you know, in advance if people are coming or not.
Okay, can we ask all the board members to then reply at least 3 days in advance if they expect to attend in person or not?
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think what happens this time is the Omicron wave, which is in full swing, and that initially I was planning and hoping to attend in person, but I thought it was unreasonable to do it at that time. So hopefully we'll be beyond that. It's not changing my mind at the last time. It's just there is a sanitary situation in California at that time.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
great.
I'm not asking for reasons or why. I just, please let us know. That's all I'm asking for. Just a common courtesy.
So I'll make sure that everybody has replied within 72 hours, so we know in the future, and then maybe there'll be less variance. Okay, anything else on the general manager's report?
No, I think Brandy's going to cover propane under operations.
Okay, Brandy, the floor is yours. Item 11.
Thank you. So just wanted to give the board just a recap of what did happen with the propane levels. You know, it is something we've been talking about, but you know, we always want to have it not be an issue. So the week before Christmas, we had 3 deliveries that we received. On the 22nd, we were at 61% and 51%. And as some of you will recall, we can get up to 80% in our tanks. So we could have put another load in the tanks. We had another load scheduled, but unfortunately, our propane supplier was having not only staffing issues, but holiday and COVID issues. So we had to reschedule the load from the 23rd to the 26th, which was during the road closure. So when we realized that we were not going to be able to get an additional delivery with the roads closing, that's when the notice to the customers went out. I did think that went relatively well. We didn't get a lot of pushback. We got mostly, how can I help sort of responses. And basically, we got down to critical low levels on the 29th, but we were able to get a delivery later that evening. And then after the storm, we went ahead and had 5 loads delivered in 5 days to get us back up to the 80% level. So, normal times of year, 95% of the time, we have plenty of propane capacity. But during the very heavy usage periods, just like we saw, we have issues. And if one thing goes wrong with a delivery, then we find ourselves in this situation. So I appreciate the board, taking a look at what we can do about that. I do note that the earlier notice to customers, going into a situation like this might be something that helps us in the future. But we are currently in good shape on propane. We will continue to monitor it. And yeah, just wanted to give you guys an update.
Brandy, is there anything else on operations you want to cover? Are there any questions?
Rick, is there
about
anything you
propane?
wanted to add?
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit to what Brandy just said, and I just want to commend the propane electric staff. Actually, I want to commend all the staff during this extremely challenging winter holiday period. It was just not only challenging snow conditions, but just challenging just for operations. Snow removal has to continue. Solid waste has to get picked up and dealt with. The radiators at the powerhouse need to be dug out and ready to go just in case there's a out valley power outage. So again, staff just went up and beyond to make sure things happen, along with the volunteer fire department responding in the middle of the night, taking care of business. So thanks to staff. But with propane, I appreciate the comments from Doug. And I think we could do a better job of public awareness on our overall operations and planning for winter preparations. It worked extremely well during the Caldor fire, and I know the FireWise Council is working hard to educate and inform the public on how to harden their homes in the event of a wildfire. So I look forward to working through communications committee, just getting the word out. Other than that, I have nothing to add for operations, unless there's any questions for us.
Well, Rick, I want to add one. I just really want to call out the incredible work that the snow removal team did. That picture in the newsletter of what it looks like to be in one of those trucks, and that wasn't even a whiteout, which is what they had to deal with. So I realize we couldn't do every driveway every day, but we know that when we have a severe condition like that, and then to do that day after day must have been just really exhausting. So I want to offer my thanks to what the snow removal team went through in these storms.
We will pass it on to staff. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any questions for the general manager operations report? Okay, so we have an interesting thing with the standing committee reports. We have our newest board member, Doug, has chosen to put the update in writing. So the planning committee report, we can go first there, and it's already in writing. So Doug, I assume is there anything else you want to add?
I'll just emphasize that I appreciate Bertrand's leadership coming into this and transitioning it over. And we had some great conversations and great topics that we talked through, as you can read through here. I'll just emphasize that going forward for the last half of the fiscal year, as we go forward, we are going to focus a lot of the agenda topics. You can see the loose schedule around the GM objectives to make sure that we're addressing what was decided, at the beginning of the fiscal year. And the last thing is that we're going to change our meeting times so that all the members of the public can attend. And that, in some ways, going back to the earlier conversation, that our committee, and I think all committees, have been working during business hours. So I don't think, and we have a lot of community participation in our committee meetings. So I don't know that I'm too concerned about our board meeting moving to 2 p.m. Being a challenge for our public, since we do have a lot of committee meetings, and we're going to try to find a time during business hours there as well. But we are going to change that time. We had a survey that went out and got results yesterday about that. So we're going to send out a new time that will be during business hours that works for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Doug, and thank you for putting everything in writing. Operations?
Hold on. I have a comment.
I'm sorry, Bertrand. Yeah.
I just don't know if I should do it now or we wait for discussion. It's related to planning and actually to that report. If you can put it back at the beginning. Thank you. And so my concern is, I mean, there are statements that are made that actually are in contradiction to the legal memo we got from our legal counsel related to the PBCs. And so I guess what I'm saying is that need to be rediscussed because as I say, there are contradictions here.
Okay. I'll let you work that out in the planning committee.
Voilà, I think I just want
I think
to,
that's the best place.
Yes, exactly. So what I want to say is, and I think Doug actually mentioned to us that he didn't have the time to share it with the planning committee so we could comment on it, and that's why it comes as a rough draft. But there are things that I think are not proper and should be addressed and rediscussed. So that I think I'm sure Doug will agree to discuss again these topics.
Okay, thanks. Operations?
Yeah, I'd like
Peter?
a suggestion to the planning committee to possibly pursue, and that would be potentially building an EV charging station in the new parking lot that's adjacent to the vehicle shop. I think I'm not sure if KVD owns that or if that's been deeded over to Vail, but having worked in the vehicle shop for 40 years, I can tell you that they have 3-phase 220 is accessible there. And I've even 15 years ago unplugged a welder to charge a vehicle there several times. I would just make that suggestion and see if that's maybe a feasible site.
Okay.
Appreciate the comment. And one of the action items that we have here is to talk to Vail about EV charging, and that's, I think, on the screen right there. So we're going to talk about that. We talked extensively about whether the district owns land or could do it, but I think that action item encompasses, I think, your point there, Peter. Well taken.
Okay, thanks. Peter, you're on operations?
Operations did not meet.
Okay. Finance, John?
Finance didn't meet as well.
Okay. Communications, Peter?
Okay, we had a meeting and the main topic was the fire safety seminar series. We wanted to approach Doug Jones to give a possible presentation at a meeting, and other issues that were brought up as possible topics would get somebody from Christmas Valley to give a report on how they survived the fire. That might be beneficial, and also get talk to an expert on tree cutting from TriTag.
Okay, thanks. And it sounds like that in the future there need to be some discussion on propane communication.
Yeah, we could add that to the list.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, personnel, Matt, we discussed one issue that will also be continued in closed session.
And we did discuss the salary survey too, Bob.
Oh, that's right. And we also discussed we will be doing a survey that Eric put together, a really good way of looking at all the different agencies that are comparable to ours to make sure that all of our salaries are in line. And so that study is underway. Is there anything else we could, John or Eric?
I think it was just those two.
Yeah, okay. Great. So so let's move on now to item 13. One of the privileges have as president is to create temporary advisory committees. So I have created two and actually have different names for them than what's on this. After seeing those names, I thought about changing them. So let me talk about the first one, which I'm calling a level of service. And the question I'd like this advisory committee to look at, and again, the advisory committees do some research and then bring it back for possible board action or possible inclusion in next year's budget. The level of service really deals with both fire safety, dealing with fire, as well as medical emergencies. I do not extend it in the police, but in those two areas. And what I'd like this committee to look at is a couple of things. One is what are the levels, how could we increase, what levels could we move to of increasing things? In fire, that example there is moving from mostly volunteer to some more staff. Emergency, we've talked in the past about who has proper certification. How do we deal with emergencies? And this is for the whole valley. So there's some coordination with Vail, which I talked about with Matt. And in terms of the funding, there's increasing the fees we already have. There's a discussion about creating new ones, but there's also the opportunity for significant possibilities of funding through the state budget that we've historically not explored. But I think my conversation with some people in the agencies 2 days ago said that there's a pretty substantial budget proposal coming in, and fire safety and currently in the mountains is a big thing. So I'm asking this temporary advisory committee to both look at what levels of service could we increase, what are the sources of funding, and then to come back with some suggestions of what could be implemented. And originally, this had been, Doug and I signed up for this. I asked John whether he would graciously fill in for me since I'm feeling just slightly overloaded. We also have some good access to other people in the community that can assist. So that's the first temporary advisory committee. And as I mentioned that to Matt Jones as well at Vail, and he's very supportive. He said, if costs may go up, but if the level of service goes up, there's value being provided. So this is the first one. So let me see if people have any comments on that.
So can you resume again how you want to call it? Because I'm confused now. It's a level of service?
Yeah, level of service.
Maybe level of emergency service might be.
Yes,
that's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
And as a relationship also to, I think, all the skiers that are getting benefit of that.
That's right.
At no charge, right?
Yes.
Or a little charge.
That's right. And again, the discussion I had there is, if it's just a tax and it leaves the area for some other purpose, that's pretty hard to do. But the question really here is, can everyone who participates in the valley, whether you're an owner or not, contribute to the level of emergency service that's available?
Right.
Those are the open questions. And again, it is up to the temporary advisory committee to pull in resources as they see fit to look at this. But
Right.
the service itself does not have public members, but it can call on resources as they see fit. Okay, so that's one.
I mentioned there was a raised hand, but it just gone away. So.
Thank you for catching that.
And Fleur, I don't know if she wanted to say something. Yes, she does.
Okay. Go ahead. Can you unmute, Anne Fleur? Yeah.
I think you answered my question that community members aren't part of these ad hoc committees. But it would be really great if at some point we could, so one of our Firewise committee members could participate in those discussions, because it's actually something we had just talked about at our last meeting, is reaching out to the PUD to talk about that specific subject. So it would be great if we could be looped in at some point.
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Great, thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Okay, any other hands raised on this one? Okay, if not, we're going to move to the second item, which is there's a memo in your packet, the strategic power plan. And the goal behind this is, as a board and as a community, we've had a lot of discussions over the last year on various ways of trying to, I think we all agree on the goals, but there's a lot of discussion on what's the most efficient way and the most productive way to think about both the reduction of demand for reduction of use of propane and the proper use of electricity. When I say proper, the most efficient way of trying to do this and to help lower costs. And so my goal in this temporary advisory committee, as documented on pages 73 and 74 in the packet, is to look at these things and propose a way that the board and staff could address these, mostly in the next fiscal year, but some things could be done in this year. And that's to really look at three areas. The first one, which John talked about quite a bit, is appliances and design knowledge for electric heating in Kirkwood. And there's a bunch of items listed here, but basically, what can we do as the PUD to identify demonstration projects, help out with that, build the level of knowledge so a homeowner or a developer would know, what resources are available, how to go about doing that, and to build confidence that we can move, that people can move to electric heating in an affordable way and an efficient way that's going to work. I mean, I think we all would like to believe it's possible and it's probably likely, but who are the actual people that are going to do it? How are they going to do it? So that's kind of one item is how to think about that. And one of the things we've kicked around is the idea of budgeting for taking the customer service building, which has a fairly aging heating system, and using that as a learning experience to replace it with a heat pump. That's one major topic. The second one is really the AMU design, which includes both the things that we have talked about, as well as Howard submitted a number of suggestions, which I would fold into that. And the goal is not really to make any decisions, but to come up with a framework of how we could efficiently work through these things and move forward on it. And then the third area is a collection of general questions which have come up that are implied by some of the things we've talked about. One is this, we'll call it the fairness issue. Do commercial accounts cost more to manage? Is that being fairly paid for? Customer capacity, which has been brought up. Full-time residents, should we consider some form of special program for those, et cetera? So those are the broad general questions. But specifically, what I'd like to propose is that Bertrand did a nice job it's now several meetings ago, of suggesting some language cleanup in the ordinance itself that are clarifications. The Finance Committee reviewed those, did an edit. So my suggestion is that we would schedule a public hearing at the earliest date to just look at those changes. It includes one design change, which would be the AMU calculations for the first year of new ownership. To have that be blended rather than just be only the previous owner. That would not affect anybody until the April recalculations. So I'd like to suggest that we would schedule a limited look at just those changes and that one change at the earliest date as a public hearing, which is required. The other changes would be that this temporary advisory committee would look at this and come up with a framework for the board to then look at it and integrate it into the budget process, and would present those results at a meeting in a timely manner, which I think I proposed the May meeting. So that's such a suggestion, and I just want to see feedback from board members and then from the public.
First, I'd like to thank Bob to actually put together that. But I have a request first. I think when you put a document like that, you should sign it. I mean, put your name. I guess it was you based on the content, but I think it
Yeah, that's a good point.
To know who is the author. Yeah.
Doug, myself, and Eric. I mean, I did the first drafting, but the ideas were consolidation from the three of us, and it's a very good point, Bertrand. Yeah.
Otherwise, I was going to ask in the discussion what happened because it was sent to the finance committee and we never had official feedback from finance committee on the adjustment on the current ordinance. So you did answer on that, and I agree that I support what you just mentioned.
Okay.
I think yes, and actually several of us, and that include Howard, has proposed actually to add on KMPUD site a page, not only, for example, on EV charging, on efficiency, and try to do a much better job at communicating all this topic to the community so people know how to actually do their project. And we cannot, like John said, we cannot just stop something and don't have a substitute for people to be able to build and maintain their homes. So I'm very encouraged by the proposal here.
Thank you very much. And I agree with what you said, and I'll work towards that.
Yeah.
Other Doug, looks like you're unmuted, please.
I am very excited about all of this. I think this is the right thing to do, and I appreciate the opportunity that we're going to have to talk through these topics going forward. I think this is moving us in the right direction.
Okay, thanks. And I correct me if I didn't say it already, but Doug and I would be the two board members on the temporary advisory committee, and obviously with Eric's active participation. Any other comments?
Well, actually, that was an information that I just heard first now. So
I should have said it first.
Yes, I was wondering about that.
And that's yeah, okay. And,
I see Howard as a raised hand. I don't know if other
if there's no other questions from the board, then let's move to Howard, unmute. And Howard, I want to thank you for taking the time to document your ideas.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. So actually, I didn't comment in the beginning, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to do it now.
Yeah, please do.
On the proposal that I submitted. I'm particularly glad because Doug is here now too. And I think it's important for him to hear this. So I hope that you all will look over what I submitted carefully, because I think that it addresses a lot of these issues. And it also goes to one of the ones that John brought up. John, I like carrots better than sticks also. And so I incorporated a significant carrot in there for anybody that wants to go all electric, whether existing or somebody who's just planning a unit. And there was one error in the submittal that is in your packet. And on page 2, I had $95 would be the charge, the minimum bill for an all electric customer, and that was based. It should be $76. So just on page 2 of that proposal, you can change from $95 under the all electric discount. It should be $76. And I guess I'm a little confused because I thought this was going to go to the finance committee, but whether it would go to finance or a temporary advisory committee, either way, I would just request the opportunity to participate in some way, because I do really feel that this proposal will take care of a lot of the problems, particularly related to transition, either new owners or people changing their use. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'd be glad to hear them.
Okay, thanks, Howard. Yeah, and my plan would be to contact you and go through some of this as part of the temporary advisory committee to get your feedback. I appreciate the submittal.
All right.
And then what we would do as part of this is suggest what should finance do, what should planning do, what should be in the budget. But all of this really has to be led by staff, and that's why I think it's important as part of planning for next year's cycle and objectives is to know how staff, what capacity we have and what things we're going to be working on.
And Fleur has her hand up as well, Bob.
Yes, and Fleur, please unmute.
Yeah, I would just add to that I think it would be really beneficial as part of that process to do some outreach to a variety of stakeholders and community members so that you can get some feedback from people of varying income levels and varying amount of usage, whether it's full-time residents, part-time residents, 60% residents. I think it's important to really keep that big picture in mind as you're working through all this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I agree. Okay, are there any other? Yeah.
Sorry, Bob, just one other addition that I would say is,
Go ahead, Doug.
Sorry, I was just saying part to enforce comment. Like one of the things that I think we will want to do here is also look at data for the year as it's gone by to see some of the changes given the rate design, some of the things that we thought might happen, just using some more of the evidence now that we will have a year to the extent that we can have possible. And that does not stop us from talking to other community members, but I do think it gives us another angle to approach some of this that we didn't have when we talked about this over a year ago. So that's just another angle that I think we'll want to make sure that we discuss and present to everyone else.
All right, good point. Bertrand, please.
Yes, I have another comment that I'd like to see be impacting this technical advisory, temporary advisory committee, is the fact that the PUD is actually doing an analysis of the current electrical circuit, so we know where are the capacities, where are the bottlenecks, and also where actually are the potential losses things. So that definitely should be a parameter in this discussion in the thing. I mean, Howard made a proposal based on demand. I think we could also look at the proposal based on capacity. Once we do have that analysis, we will have a better sense of capacity, and that could be a factor that could be used to actually alleviate the problem that we have now in the AMU.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other hands up, Eric?
No.
Okay, good. Then that covers item 13. We now move to item 14, which is general discussion, opportunity for board members to ask clarifying questions or bring up matters that were not on the agenda, but those are not ones that we can discuss. So let me see if there's any. Bertrand.
Yes, first I'd like to have an update on the shut-off status for the propane meter enclosure issues.
Is Brandy available to provide that?
She still is on, but I know there's 2 that are pending shut off that have not signed the waiver or implemented the needed improvements.
So that's 2. And if that happened, what would be the date?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't know the exact date.
Okay. So that actually better than we were last time. We had 12, down maybe 5, and now 2. So hopefully we can work this out. Then my next question was about COVID. And So I received a form from the district asking me to disclose my situation so I could attend meeting in person. And one thing brought to me is there was no word on testing. It was only related to vaccination. And actually it was just disclosure. It was not of any requirement. So I'd like to understand what are the policy currently in place at the district on vaccine requirement, if any, and also on testing requirement.
There is no vaccine requirement. There is no testing requirement. We allow employees to self-attest. The form the board received is the exact same form that staff received.
Okay, so I mean, we don't know what the future holds, but I find it a bit concerning at that stage that there is no testing requirement, nor if people are not vaccinated. I think that should be discussed. I don't know if it is the rule now is that we have to send a form to be able to ask something to be brought on the agenda.
Is there a request to review the current policy that we have?
Yeah, I would
which is everyone, employees have voluntarily submitted information. And we've had no infections, I believe, Eric, is it? Or I don't even know if we can.
Well, there are infections in the valley. I don't know.
Yeah, but no,
yes.
by staff.
Yeah. So again, it might be a bridge under water under the bridge by then, but I think it was discussing. I mean, many corporations actually have a mandate to have either a vaccination requirement or a testing requirement if people don't want to be vaccinated.
We are following the requirements of Cal OSHA. Period. The end.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other board members have a general discussion they want to bring up?
Yeah, so the next thing I'd like to discuss, a few board meetings ago, I asked to have an updated organization chart, and I have not received that, and I would love to receive that.
Okay.
It seems to be actually of pertinence at that time.
All right.
Since the personnel committee has a reorganization agenda item.
Okay.
Yeah,
so noted. So noted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other general discussion? Okay. If not, at this point, I want to thank everybody. I think we had some really good discussion. Got a lot of information out there, and we are now ready to move into a closed session where we are discussing a public employee discipline dismissal release issue. And so we will do that in closed session. Eric, do you want to just explain the procedure?
Yes, so I'll need all attendees to leave. And then.
Bob, will we come back to open session to do agenda item 16 then? Because I think we might want to change agenda item 16 given what we discussed earlier today.
Yes, we can do that at the end.
Okay.
Again, Howard, Jack, could you please leave the room, please? All right. And then, of course, Peter will have to recuse himself. So I'll go ahead and.
That means I have to leave, or
yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here now.
Okay. Okay, thank you. This is a continuation of the board meeting from earlier. We've finished our closed session. I want to report out our decisions as part of that. The first decision is that the board accepts management's findings with regards to the allegation in terms of Derek's issues. Secondly, the board recommends a reorganization, that water, wastewater, solid waste would be reorganized into a water and solid waste department with a level 3 operator and a level 1 or 2 based on available, what's out there in the job market and available skills. And then secondly, a dedicated wastewater department with a level 3 operator and a level 1 or 2 operator, again, based on what's available in the market. We request that staff set the salaries appropriate based on market conditions and immediate recruiting. And lastly, in this interim, to hire water talent to be a supplement to our current staff. Eric, is there anything else that I missed?
No, I think that's everything.
Okay, and I think that concludes then this meeting. And I thank you all. And now the only other topic we have is that because we've made a change to the meetings, item 16, rather than the next meeting scheduled for February 13th at 8 a.m., I would propose that there would be February 12th at 2 p.m.
Yes.
Okay, and so we would correct that
Yes.
in our communications with the public.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, we adjourn this meeting. I thank you all for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye.